Shut up. All right. Um. So today I was listening to a lot of you know at work I was listening to a lot of things that made me try to understand maybe where prescriptions could even come from an atheist type of mindset. And then I was actually listening to like look, much as I shit on psychology, right? I do think that psychology has um some value in at least in the ability of philosophically understanding the self, right? I don't know if like a psychiatrist in the way that they're taught in the modern sense are capable of really helping, because I think ultimately what happens uh, when you have psychological problems, it's mostly could be solved from being able to ground your mind in something and sort of in a philosophical way kind of take apart the issues that you're having and being able to help rationalize your life and you as a person better. So I do think that as long as psychology is taking this very philosophical type of approach, that it could be helpful for some people. But I also don't think that the philosophical grounding that most people have without God and without the church and without all these, I don't think that it will do anything besides put a band-aid on situations. But I do think that there are people like Carl Jung who have aspects of what his aspects of what he's trying to figure out and observe through people. I think that he finds stuff that is true. I don't think that everything he says is correct or true, but I do think that a lot of what he's saying with the right type of grounding, and maybe with um better explanation of each one of his types of his archetypes. I think if he were to just slightly correct it to a more Christian model and not just a pure scientific, they're just observing these things. Let me say this. Let me check something, because I'm pretty sure he was a Christian, but I think he was, yeah. Uh, okay, so this is why maybe that Carl Jung to me makes more sense, because I do think he maybe doesn't word it a lot of the stuff that he talks about in a Christian sense, but he does. Maybe that's why it makes more sense. But anyways, I kind of wanted to go through some of the stuff. I wanted to go through the archetypes that he talks about first, and kind of just to me give a better explanation for what I think a better understanding of these concepts would be through Christian aspects. Maybe I don't know, but I'm going to go through some of the archetypes real quick, and then we're going to go through something that I think is kind of true when it comes to, because I know Carl Jung does a lot of work on empaths. Right? Well, that's the big thing, but I think he makes a good case for why I think empath is like the default for what all humans are. I think all humans are naturally empathic. I just don't think that I think there are things, and maybe even the way that creation is right now and the way it's corrupted, maybe it twists it to where people aren't able to connect with others very easily. But anyways, we'll go through this real quick.
Few people have had as much influence on modern psychology as Carl Jung. He has coined terms such as extroversion and introversion, archetypes, anima and animus, shadow, and the collective unconscious.
Now, the one thing I don't know a whole lot about is the anima and animus thing. I know about the shadow, I know about the collective unconscious and the archetypes, but the anima and the animus is something I haven't really delved into a whole lot.
Among others. He was a practicing psychiatrist and is regarded as the founder of analytical psychology, or Jungian analysis. In his early years, he came into contact with Sigmund Freud, the founder of
Yeah, we'll leave fucking Freud's perverted ass where he's at. I don't.
They had a close relationship.
He doesn't make any sense to me.
Human psychology. However, they parted ways as Jung's personal research on analytical psychology, and especially upon the discovery of a collective unconscious, made it impossible for him to follow Freud's psychoanalysis. This resulted in a painful schism after years of collaboration.
If I had to pick, once again, I'll just say, if I had to pick which one I would agree with way more than the other, like Freud, I barely agree with at all. Just seems like he has a very poor foundation in everything that he tries to discuss or try to understand. He seems to think everybody wants to fuck their mother, but which is, maybe if he was talking about Muslims, it'd be true. I don't know.
He essentially gave birth to the empirical science of the psyche, which culminated in his magnum opus, The Collected Works, written over a period of 60 years during his lifetime.
Freud also has this weird thing where he thinks children who aren't, what the hell is that? Children who aren't breastfed have like oral fixes. Like it's weird shit. Weird shit.
Jung distinguishes our psyche into three different realms: consciousness, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Consciousness is composed of our field of awareness, all the experiences that we are aware of. This is where we form our ego. However, according to Jung, it is dwarfed in relation to the unconscious. The personal unconscious is particular to each individual and is made of parts that are unique to our own lives. Thoughts we are not aware of, have forgotten, or have been repressed due to their disturbing nature. On the other hand, the collective unconscious is the deepest part of our unconscious, which is genetically inherited and not shaped by personal experience. This is where the archetypes are found.
Right, so in an easier way to kind of understand it, I think, let's go back a little bit.
To the unconscious.
So the unconscious, is just like your type of nature, I guess. It's just how you are on a, I don't know how to really word this, from a instinctual level, I suppose. It's how you are without your thoughts. Like these are the things that you do without really thinking about it. There you go. That's a better way to say it.
Particular to each individual and is made of parts that are unique.
So the personal unconscious is like your personality, kind of, I think. It's the aspects of you and how you react to situations that you're put in a way that's completely, like, you're not actively pursuing that. Like, you're not actively doing that. You can change that aspect of you. You can change your unconscious nature, but it's more difficult than you would think it'd be.
Unique to our own lives. Thoughts we are not aware of, have forgotten, or have been repressed due to their disturbing nature. On the other hand, the collective unconscious is the deepest part of our unconscious, which is genetically inherited and not shaped by personal experience. This is where the archetypes are found. Archetypes represent universal patterns and images that are part of the collective unconscious. Jung believed that we inherit these archetypes just as we inherit instinctive patterns of behavior.
Right.
Jung was also an expert on the study of religious and mythological symbology. The work in both of these fields led to the discovery of the archetypes. The study of these myths of cultures revealed similar patterns. He even found the same symbols in dreams of patients suffering from schizophrenia, which reinforced the idea of archetypes and the collective unconscious. Apart from his travels in the United States and
Yeah, I would say that the archetypes are kind of like prime modes of being, right? Like they're just, we have these types of archetypes that we think of that are, the hero, the savior, the victim, these different types of personalities that people have. Right now, you would say that there's a lot of uh, victimhood within the culture that we currently have. Victimhood, the victim archetype would be very prevalent right now, and the hero-ish type archetype is kind of rare now, but I don't think it's as rare. But anyways,
England, Jung had traveled to East Africa to learn about the natives who had never been in contact with European culture. He had also traveled to India, where he felt himself under the influence of a foreign culture for the first time. Hinduism played an important element in his understanding of the role of symbolism and the unconscious. Although Jung suggested a series of archetypes such as the father, the mother, the wise old man, the hero, the trickster, among others, we will be focusing on what are regarded as the
right. So those types of archetypes, are pretty common throughout all of history too. So yeah, like when you think about the hero, you think about, the selfless person who would do whatever it takes to save somebody. When you think of the trickster, you just think of the guy that's kind of a troll that just says and does whatever it can take to get a reaction out of somebody. There's a lot. There's more than just these prime archetypes, but they're usually like categories. They're usually like mixtures of these archetypes.
four major Jungian archetypes: the self, the persona, the shadow, and the anima animus. The first archetype is the self. To understand the self, we need to know how it differs from the ego, which is part of the realm of consciousness. Jung considers the self to be superior in rank to the ego. The ego is acquired during an individual's lifetime, and therefore it is a conscious factor. In
Yeah.
theory, you could describe the ego completely, but this would only amount to the conscious personality, not the total picture, which would have to include the unconscious parts. The ego is composed of the somatic and the psychic factors. The somatic is the physical self, our body, while the psychic relates to our inner self, our mind. Both the somatic and the psychic have conscious and unconscious factors.
All right. So the ego is something that's influenced by, like the conscious thoughts that you have is affected by, your bodily state. The healthier you are, maybe the better you be able to make decisions. But anyways,
The ego's main characteristic is our individuality. That is part of our consciousness. However, it is only one part of the personality and not the whole of it. The remaining part is composed of the unconscious. The sum of the conscious and unconscious is what Jung calls the self, which makes up the total personality of an individual. To achieve the self, Jung's central concept revolved around what he called individuation or self-realization, a lifelong process of distinguishing the self out of each individual's conscious and unconscious elements. This he believed to be the main goal of human psychological development. Now we delve into what Jung considered the most important part of.
and this is something that when somebody brings up the term self-actualization, right? I don't think that they fully comprehend what that really means. Self-actualizing, is being fully aware of how you're being influenced. It is kind of a type of like being able to rationalize despite the state of you, right? Your emotional state, your physical state, being able to understand your instinctual draws that are pushing you to do something, being aware of it and being able to resist it when necessary. So I think that's how I've understood self-actualization, understanding you and how to control that aspect, those aspects. Like this is something that you see, I would say, typically with people who are too attuned to other people's emotions. Like if for people who just seem to be able to instinctually understand like the mood of a room or the emotions of another person, they typically are able to either one of two things. They either become swept up in other people's emotions and they become like a reflection of that other person, never truly understanding who they are, which would be the unconscious kind of empath person. But the unthinking, the unself actualized empath, and then there would be uh, the self actualized empath who is completely aware of the other's emotions and being able to separate themselves not only from those their emotions but their own emotions at the same time, trying to solve whatever the problem is, or be able to rationalize the situation better.
Of ourselves, the unconscious. Here's where we encounter the persona, shadow, anima, and animus, which have the most disturbing influence on the ego.
Now, I'll just go through like the persona, as far as I understand, is just like the idea that you're putting on this different sort of attitude, this mask, I guess, as a method in which to be able to more easily get through a situation. Like, for instance, I would put on a different persona if I'm being a father. I'd put on a different persona if I'm being a son. I'd put on a different persona when I go to work. I put on a different persona when, I'd be a husband. These are things um, that people do naturally without really comprehending that they're doing it. And to some extent, maybe they do get that, but for the most part, I actually have a problem with this whole idea with the persona. I do treat my child differently than I would treat any individual, right? But I would say that I really only have two personas. There's the asshole who is just the regular default version of me, and then there's the dad me. Those are the only two personas that I have. I think I think there's a lot of value of getting rid of these ideas of a persona in which you have to conduct yourself differently depending on the circumstances you're in. I don't like that idea. It's always something I've tried to get rid of within myself. The only thing that I can see value in is having a different attitude when it comes to teaching a child or teaching somebody. Taking a fatherly role is probably a good persona to have. Hey, Kat.
The persona. The persona is known as a conformity archetype. It is an element of the personality which arises for reasons of adaptation or
Yeah,
personal
like I was saying.
convenience. If you have certain masks you put on in various situations, that is a persona. In essence, it conceals our real self, presenting ourselves as someone different to who we really are. As we please other people with our persona, it leaves our negative traits that contradict our real selves, forming our shadow. The shadow.
Right, and this is where I kind of have a problem with what Jung says. I don't necessarily think that he's making any kind of prescription. He's just describing what he's found, and I do kind of agree with these people put on these masks and they end up suppressing bits of themselves into the back of their mind, and that shadow, I guess, ends up lashing out at people occasionally because they are not able to really fully control it. They're just suppressing it because they don't know how to control the darker instincts in their mind, which leaves them vulnerable to it. And it does develop in this type of demon-esque type of thing that's always in the back of your mind, clawing and scratching at you to try to make you uh, fall under its will.
Jung stated the shadow to be the unknown dark side of the personality. Whereas the contents of the personal unconscious are acquired during an individual's lifetime, the contents of the collective unconscious are invariably archetypes that were present from the beginning. Among the shadow, the anima, and the animus, the most accessible and easiest to experience is the shadow, since it can be retrieved from the content of the personal unconscious. To be conscious of the shadow, there must be a considerable moral effort recognizing the dark aspects of one's personality as real and present. While some traits of one's own shadow can be recognized, some offer greater resistance to moral control and prove almost impossible to influence. An individual who does not recognize psychological projection, a defense mechanism in which the individual defends himself against the unconscious impulses, denying their existence in himself while attributing them to others, will
Yeah, and a lot of people have this really big problem where they end up suppressing these darker aspects of what is, the twisted, corrupt part of the human nature. And they push it back and they just assume that because they have this paranoia that this is what they would do if given the chance, that everybody would just do that. So you have to be careful with that whole concept. You have to be aware of that part of you that is willing to go to whatever ends to satisfy yourself on a personal level, like whether it is satisfying the part of you wanting to be dominant over people, or what would it be, or you just being correct. Like you see a lot of this actually with feminism, where well, I'm not within, what I'm saying is the average feminist person that would refer to themselves as a feminist, they suppress those darker parts of them and assume that they don't exist, and they actually just assume that everyone else is that evil part of them, trying to convince them that they're actually evil. But it's not. It's just a part of the human condition in its current state.
eventually create an illusory environment whereby he changes the world into the replica of his own unknown face.
And this is something else too. Like, I have a problem with people. Like, I make the joke where I say I don't feel anything. I don't have emotions. Like, I say that shit all the time. But there's two different ways of truly believing that, right? There's the not having emotions because you have full control and reign over your emotions, and you can separate yourself from them to make rational decisions, to be able to make an issue better. And then there's the I'm just going to ignore that I have emotions. And what ends up happening when you try to ignore the fact that you have emotions is that they end up dominating you in the background without you really being able to realize it. And a lot of what happens in especially men is they become extremely prideful and bitter when they try to just ignore emotions rather than just accept they're there, but just push them over here. Cool, they're there, but they go in the corner. They're not going to actually inform my decision making on this. Those are two different aspects. You don't ignore them, you just put them where they're supposed to be, off in the corner, and you can still hear them and know that they're there, but just understanding that they are there and that they're trying to influence you, and you should be actively trying to discount their assertions towards you, I guess. It's the easiest way I can think of. It's not something that really a lot of men seem to be able to grasp with right now in modern society. A lot of men think that they can just ignore the emotions, and what ends up happening is they just pretend they don't have them, which means they're being, they're being controlled by them. That's ultimately what happens.
The shadow plays an important role in balancing the overall psyche. A weak adaptation of the shadow results in a low level of personality, whereby the individual behaves like a passive victim of his shadow, extremely worried with the opinions of others, a walking persona. People who do not look at their shadows directly project them onto others. The qualities that we often cannot stand in others, we have in ourselves and wish not to see. But
Right, and this is another aspect of not having control over your emotions, right? You're if you don't have control over them and you're ignoring that they're even there, then what happens when you're having an interaction with somebody and they make you feel a type of way? It's not actually you having any sort of feeling towards being treated in this respect. What it is, this person's doing something to you and you don't like it, and you're not able to actually fully grasp what's going on. You can have somebody, a bad interaction with somebody that makes you feel a type of way. And as long as you're aware that that emotion is there, you can push it to the side, lower its influence, and then try to rationally go through the situation. But if you just ignore it, then what's happening is that you're taking what they're doing as an input, and you're just creating an output without being able to rationalize what's actually going on.
To truly grow as a person, one must integrate their shadow and balance it with their persona. It is possible for man to recognize the relative evil of his nature, but it is rare for him to gaze into the face of absolute evil. An encounter with your shadow may...
Okay, we can't ignore that. Did she just get titty grabbed and just have a heart attack? What the fuck just happened to that video? What the fuck? But it's just, it's insane. Like, and this here comes the weird shit with like the Jungian stuff. Like Freud and Jung were really obsessed with dreams. Jung, I remember a lot of the stuff that he talks about is about people's dreams and how they reflect the inner self.
Appear in dreams typically as a person of the same sex as you. It depends on the living experience of each individual rather than being inherited in the collective unconscious. The dissolution of the persona and understanding one's own shadow is a central part of the process of individuation. In terms of the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it must be Jekyll, the conscious personality, who integrates the shadow and not the other way around. Otherwise, you will become the slave of your autonomous shadow. The integration of the shadow marks the first stage of the analytical process. Without it, a recognition of anima and animus is impossible. However, the acknowledgement of the shadow must be a continuous process throughout one's life. Anima and animus. Within
And something that I kind of, it could just be the way that this guy's phrasing it, but the integration of the like shadow self. Ooh, like the idea that you have to become like, never mind, I don't think it was actually said. I think what is being said there is that you have to be aware of it.
shadow, there exist two contrasexual figures, the anima and the animus. In every man's psyche, there is an unconscious feminine aspect called the anima, which is a personification of all feminine psychological tendencies, while in every woman's psyche, there is an unconscious masculine aspect called the animus. Unlike the shadow, which represents the personal unconscious, through which its content can be made conscious,
so this is something that I don't actually agree with Jung with at all. I don't think that you have an unconscious woman inside of you. I think that's weird and gay. I think what you have is a set of irrational parts of you that, this is the thing, I don't think that men and women actually feel the same. Like, I don't think we're separate species, but I think that I just don't think that men and women have the same types of emotions. I don't think that there's some unsuppressed fucking unconscious woman living inside, man. That's weird, you know? I think what maybe there would be this aspect within me that could have like what I think a woman might feel, but I don't think that I have. I don't think anybody has an unconscious woman inside. That's fucking.
Anima and animus are much further away from consciousness and are seldom realized. Man's anima is characterized by the feminine.
Or maybe I'm just,
like
oh, good Lord, Jesus Christ, motherfucker. All right, we're moving on from that. I was not at Jesus fucking Christ. That's artistic representation, YouTube. I don't fucking, that jump scared me. We're moving on to the next thing, though. That was Jesus fucking Christ.
And nourishing charmed circle.
Okay, so good Lord. All right, this just got weird and gay. Well, oh my God. Jesus Christ. All right, well, I think we're moving on from Carl Jung because like that fuck with me. Jesus Christ. I might go back to him in a second, but Jesus fucking Christ. I need to get something to drink real quick. Oh my God. All right. So, fuck. So I'm back to this guy. Like he makes a lot of fucking philosophy videos, and as long as he's not talking about his own weird gay emotions, writing in his diary on a YouTube video, he actually has some stuff that's good. He has pretty good explanations of types of philosophy. He's just really gay when he starts talking about his own philosophy. But I kind of wanted to I can't pronounce the fucking name. Dostoyevsky, somebody that I've been kind of interested in getting into so far, because as I learn more about his philosophy, it really does seem like he's a modern cynic, or not a modern cynic, but a more modern-ist type cynic. It's actually crazy how he almost aligns up directly with a bunch of my core philosophies.
I maintain it is the suffering of an inability to love. Fyodor Dostoyevsky is known as a historic thinker on many, many topics. In his novels and articles, he discusses God, morality, nihilism, and existentialism. But today, I want to focus on an often neglected part of Dostoyevsky's overall philosophy, his ideas about love. Because for this Russian author, love was a subject of endless fascination, and it crops up in almost...
Well, I mean, this is the thing, too, right? A lot of people focus on the negative parts of what it is to be human, but I think, like, the most interesting and borderline miraculous, I guess, I don't know if it's, but borderline just insane as a type of concept is love. Love is honestly the most confusing, interesting, and honestly just foundation building to such an extreme level that I don't know if a concept of love could ever have just naturally emerged. Like it's so insane, like what love is, just from the instinctual understanding of it. It doesn't make any sense that this would even be a thing. Something that I've asked somebody when I was debating evolution, could they describe to me how love could emerge and why it should exist and why it's more efficient for a survival mechanism to love someone over just taking what you want from somebody. Because a lot of people, when they think about specifically evolution, they don't actually comprehend that evolution is an inherently selfish, destructive thing that could never, I don't think that it could ever just produce love. I don't think that love could ever emerge out of that. It, it's such an alien concept within evolution that even when I was an atheist, I thought love was just a lie. I thought love was non existent, that it was just a concept that people told themselves after they reached a level of consciousness that uh, made them feel like everything they were doing was valuable, but ultimately wasn't. But so that I don't think that anybody can really ever come to a good grasp of what love is, just basing their ideology on evolution. It's such an alien thing and just doesn't make any sense that love would even exist at all. It's actually crazy. So yeah, I could understand why. And I've read some of his stuff when he's talking about love too. He, it is probably the most interesting of the human emotions that just doesn't make any sense of how it even came to be without God.
every one of his works. Dostoyevsky is adept at displaying how love can compel us to commit heinous, self-destructive
Yeah.
actions, but also how it can redeem us, grant us meaning, and ultimately even save the world. And if that's not a reason to keep watching, I don't know what is. Get ready to learn.
Well, I mean, he is a fucking, like, what is a tween girl writing in his diary, so I'm sure, anyways, I just told you why I was interested in it, but I'm just making fun of myself at this point.
Love can kill, what passion has to do with politics, and why, for Dostoevsky, love was the fundamental redeeming quality of all humanity. As always, bear in mind this is just my interpretation of Dostoevsky, and you are totally free to disagree. Also, there will be spoilers ahead for many of Dostoevsky's novels, though I will...
And this is something that I'll probably talk about a little bit later, because there's another video, but I do think that some of the most heinous things that you could do as a human being comes from this twisting of what love is. It's using love or obsession, which I think is a corruption of love, which is obsession and domineering and an attempt to control. What would it be? I guess controlling behaviors. Like, it's I think some of the worst things that people will do, they will do it out of a twisted sense of what love is, which also doesn't make any sense from an evolution. But anyways, I'm not talking about evolution anymore. Evolution's gay.
Do my best to avoid giving too much away on major plot points. But with that out of the way, let's begin by exploring the darkest aspect of Dostoevsky's philosophy of love. What happens to us when we are deprived of it? 1. The unloving life is not worth living. The quote at the start of this video comparing hell to an inability to love comes from the elder Zosima in Dostoevsky's magnum opus, The Brothers Karamazov. According to him, the quickest and most potent way a human can plunge themselves into unimaginable torment is by cutting off their ability to love others. Deprived of this love, they will begin to fester like an infected wound as resentment, envy, and hatred fills the place where affection could have been. And
see, this is kind of speaking to where I was at when I had gotten to this understanding that I thought love was a lie. What ended up happening is I just became extremely bitter and nihilistic, and everything in the world just seemed pointless and absolutely, completely and holistically just suffering for the sake of it. Which, created a person in which thought that if I could accomplish this delusion of what I thought love was, which is what happened to me in my mid to late 20s, if I could delude myself into loving somebody, if I could convince myself that this stuff is true just by its own merits, then maybe I could accomplish something and I could live a life worth living. But what ended up happening is that because I was an atheist, I had no ability to truly love anything. I had no ability to. I could only lie to myself to say I loved things. And I was just an extremely bitter, angry person. And even within the idea that I had, it's something that changed that and like really truly shifted the way I thought about things was when I had a child, because that was an instinctual type of event that happened that twisted and changed everything that I knew internally to the point where I started to not even understand how that feeling would ever be something that was valuable within nature. Yeah, it actually, like, the experience of love and loving my daughter when she was born was the catalyst that sort of sent me down this path to eventually not being an atheist anymore. It was the first step.
Nowhere is this more evident than in the character of the underground man. Famously, Dostoyevsky's novella, Notes from the Underground, begins with the main character declaring himself sick, spiteful, and unattractive. And throughout his story, he narrates the various ways he sought to enhance the misery of other people. He vividly describes the sick pleasure he took in a toothache because he could make the lives of everyone around him that bit worse, with his loud and theatrical moans and complaints. He says that in his position as a civil servant, he would exercise his petty power on the people around him in a needlessly cruel manner. He would care nothing for the feelings of other people and would even go out of his way to make their lives worse just to savor their suffering. His entire philosophy can be summed up in the following phrase: "Let the world go to hell, but I should always have my tea." Of course, this philosophy is...
And see, I think that this is, I've seen, I think everybody's kind of met a person that's like that. That is so completely self-absorbed and only takes pleasure in the fact that they can make other people suffer themselves. It's like the whole idea of like crabs boiling in a pot. When one is able to escape, the others just drag them back in. It's kind of like that. But I didn't end up that way. I just hated the world, so I tried to stop interacting with it as much as possible.
hardly a successful one, and the underground man ends up in profound misery as a result of it. The core of the underground man's suffering is that he has absolutely no fellow feeling for other people, and it is tragically understandable how he has become this way. To hear him tell it, he only has cruel and disloyal so-called friends, a meagre pension, and no reason to carry on living. In such a situation, it is easy to see how someone could lose their sense of love entirely. But this lack of love dooms him all the same. Ever eager to present complex psychological profiles, Dostoyevsky shows how this aggressive spite eventually morphs into the underground man's way of punishing himself. Towards the end of the novella, he begins to befriend a poor and downtrodden prostitute named Liza, and it seems like there might be the first smatterings of genuine affection here. They have a long conversation where the underground man shocks her with his brutal and cruel honesty, but then briefly softens, inviting her to visit him at his home. But when she does appear and offers out a hand of friendship and companionship, he suddenly changes his tune, berating her and insulting her until she leaves. Now, he is not just unloving out of lack of opportunity, it has become a direct self-harming choice. He soon...
Well, I think what ends up happening, because this is another thing that I see people commonly do, is that I think that ultimately what happens is people get comfortable in what they understand, and when they get to that point where this is my life, this is the way I'm going to live until I die, when something uproots that, there is this denial process. And there are people that are so, I guess, deep-rooted in that, have been in it so long, that when something like that appears, they don't just deny it, they actively try to sabotage it. For me, when good things start to happen to me, I deny them. I don't accept that they're actually good things. I just assume that what it is something that's been placed there to either test me or to later on harm, like, hurt me or try to attack me to make me stronger in the long run. But in the short term, maybe the test is to just not accept the good that I think is happening, to ignore it and to pursue what I ultimately understand that the end result of my life should be, which is, becoming part of the church, going through theosis and doing the best that I can to reconnect to God. And everything outside of that seems to be just a type of sabotage. But I've changed my mind on that to a good extent over the past 4 or 5 months. But now I just assume that everything is an opportunity, in the way that I choose to interact with that opportunity is a reflection on what God would want for me, and try to create me as a person that would be helpful to be around with others.
Regrets his cruel...
That makes no sense. I'm fucking sorry. I'm starting to write in my diary now.
and begins to run after Liza. But at the last moment, he decides it was better to spread his bitter resentment to another person. Now she will know the truth as well, that the world is not.
Which, by the way, in case nobody can understand this right now, what this is personal psychological philosophy. This isn't like broad societal things that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about right now is philosophy that can help an individual be able to better interact with the world. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
Loving or kind, and it never will be. The hot brand of his insults will turn her against humanity as well, and a new underground man will be created, where before there was such promise of selflessness and redemption. The underground man has become so deep in his hatred of himself and the world that he does not know how to love anymore. It is like an atrophied muscle he has lost control over. And here we get potentially the saddest line in the entire story. Liza certainly did fully understand that I was a despicable man, and what was worse, incapable of loving her. The underground man is so torn apart inside with the insults and injustices of the world, and so unable to look past the malaise of his own self-hatred, that he is permanently deprived of love. Thus he dwells in a Dostoyevskyan hell, mourning the loss of what could have made his life worthwhile. And when Dostoyevsky equates lovelessness with hell, he is not talking merely about romantic love. Some of the happiest characters in his other novels are contented monastics, filled with a gentle love for everyone. But it...
And see, this is something, like, a lot of people, like, just to kind of chime in on what he was, like, self-hatred is something that is such a dangerous thing to have. What else, Smoking Spaceman? But self-hatred is something that's such a dangerous thing to have. It is a tool that I suppose could be used for good, but I don't. It's one of those things that, like, it can actually make you totally incapable of doing anything if you have an uncontrolled self-hatred. I think a self-hatred can be okay to a certain extent. I think ultimately what my goal is to reach a level of, like, self-neutrality. Like, I don't love myself and I don't hate myself. I just do what I think would be best for, if I would more so try to think of myself as, how would I treat somebody who I would want? How would I treat somebody else that I love? I should treat myself that way, I guess, in some way. I don't know. It's weird. Okay, and that's an aspect that I haven't put a whole lot of thought into, because, self-hatred is one of those things that once you have it, it, like, never truly goes away. And it is something that I think is almost better to be used in a way that I think it could be repurposed, because I don't know if it's something that ever really goes away.
It is the all-encompassing, totalizing completeness of the underground man's hatred that dooms him. Because it is not just poor Liza he despises, it is all of mankind. Every indignity or suffering thrown at him becomes another twisted smile he can curl in the face of the next person he passes. He is the very definition of a hurt person hurting people. And he is also the starkest example of just how important love is in Dostoyevsky's overall philosophy. For some thinkers, like Plato, love is a wonderful complement to a good life, but is ultimately subordinate to more important matters, like virtue and the pursuit of truth. For others, like Nietzsche, interpersonal love is often looked down upon, with him remarking that very few great thinkers have ever been married. The Romantic poets...
Well, Nietzsche's a fucking bitch, but I actually disagree with Plato too. Like, I don't actually think that. I think that if you have a true and complete comprehension of what love is, that love is the goal. Love is everything. Love is greater than what is virtue, because if you have a true sense of what love is and you're enacting it upon the world, then you naturally have virtue. And if what was the other thing?
Love is a wonderful complement to a good life, but is ultimately subordinate to more important matters like virtue and the pursuit of truth.
Pursuit of truth. I think that ultimately what love does as well is kind of it. I think those three things are kind of the same. Maybe I'm conflating them, but it does seem like love would encompass all of those things. I don't think it's subordinate. I think it just all those things are the same. Love is, I think, completely truthful.
For others, like Nietzsche, interpersonal love is often looked down upon, with him remarking that very few great thinkers have ever been married.
Yeah, well, I think that's just a lot of code from Nietzsche. Like, fuck you, Nietzsche. Like, thanks for destroying the entire yeah, like I know that what people usually when they read Nietzsche, like they're actually misunderstanding everything that he says. But fuck you, Nietzsche.
Romantic poets often depicted love as a powerful, motivating, and destabilizing force, throwing our souls into torment and ecstasy with every passing moment. But Notes from the Underground demonstrates that for Dostoyevsky, love is not just powerful, not just valuable, but is an indispensable component of a worthwhile life. Without
Yeah, that's something that is, I think, once you what up, Mango? Once you have a full and complete comprehensible understanding of what love is, you begin to realize how indispensable it is. You can't have a life uh you can't have life without love. It's not possible. I got the dude yesterday to accept that he had no knowledge. It was fun. Oh, are you talking about the dude that I was just like I was so drunk and I was like I fucking hate talking to atheists in general. And I just could not. He was so fucking annoying. And I couldn't and I was too drunk to be able to hold back how annoying he was to me. I want to like I probably made I remember making a couple of he literally said 2 plus 2 at the moment. I just remember that I made fun of him for talking to his bird because he looked like Nikola Tesla. That was a good joke.
any love at all, no compassion for a partner or affection for a friend, or even a loose sense of commonality.
Because he couldn't imagine probable different result somehow. You told him to shut his camera down. It was funny. Oh yeah, he shouldn't have turned his camera on. That was brutal, dude. Like with that, oh my god, I don't even. He should have never turned that camera on. You can't turn a camera on when I'm drunk. You turn the camera on, you put a close up to you, I'm gonna make fun of you. That's just what's gonna happen.
With the rest of the human race, we are doomed to be miserable and despise ourselves. To ask someone to live without loving others might as well be asking them to live without the use of oxygen. For those of you familiar with Buddhist philosophy, you might
don't. But what when Dostoyevsky says that, like I agree with that too. Like love is once you fully grasp what it truly is, and it's not just some emergent property out of nature that makes you want to reproduce. It becomes I mean, love ultimately becomes the meaning to everything. I think a lot of the problem that people have is not having a full comprehensive understanding of what love truly is and the entailments of that existing. That's why I never came. Well, I can't say anything right now about that. But I will say that I wouldn't be making fun of you, and I didn't. Don't Bible spurg at me, Mango. Anyways,
some parallels.
All right, let's look at the verse you're talking about. I'm not gonna be an asshole today because I've actually had a completely change of perspective today on Protestants too. Like, I think I accidentally ended up. I think what I've done lately is I think I've given Protestants the idea that I hate them. I don't hate Protestants. I just I'm brutal, and and I think I've found what I think is the true church, what is the ark, what is going to carry people into heaven, and I like to try to convince people into that. But I think I give off the wrong impression. I need to become less aggressive. You're just picking at, yeah, I know. Avoidance theory confirmed. All right, what was I doing? First Corinthians. Let me just copy paste this. I'll read it. Like, I try to avoid scripture, but like I don't think there's anything wrong with using scriptures. It's just I don't like them being used in a debate sense. If I speak in tongues, men or angels. Did I get the wrong thing? Yeah, I don't know what this is all about. I'm just confused. We're moving on.
Here with the idea of love.
Uh, uh, I'm just too aggressive when it comes to theological stuff. I need to actually tone it down when it comes to talking about religion and stuff. There is a lot of stuff that I don't understand. Like, I don't, this is something I don't actually give a fuck about a lot of people's personal life struggles unless they're canonized as a saint and there's something that I think could be learned from their life struggles. If they're just like a regular dude that came up with a theology, I don't really care about how flawed their interpersonal life is. I care about their theological assertions. And like, if I have to apply like their whole life story through their theological concoctions that they invented, then it's makes the theology just absolutely, why can't the theology just stand on its own? I don't understand why I have to learn about the history of some, anyways.
Kindness and the unskillful emotions. I also want to focus on Dostoyevsky's choice to say that hell is the inability to love. He seems to agree with Aristotle here that the greater part of love is in the loving. It might be heartbreaking and isolating for us to feel that we are not loved, but to use this as a reason to never love others is to needlessly increase our suffering.
And that is something that I think ultimately is very powerful about Christianity too, is that this is something that I've always struggled with, is the feeling of not being loved, right? That's something that I've had my entire life up until I became a Christian. And even if I think that God would be angry with me with some of the things that I do, I know that he's not angry at me because he hates me. He's angry because he loves me. You know, there's that concept. It's like an anger of like, you could do better. And I think that that is a loving type of anger, you know.
100-fold. It is the genius of Dostoevsky.
But what I'm also trying to say is that just having the idea that there is something there that is constantly loving you and wanting you to do what's best for yourself, or not just best for yourself, but best for uh just do the best that you actually can do instead of um just do the best that you can do rather than just the best you think you can do. Like, actually doing the best, not, just accepting, well, this is all I can do.
Argue that our philosophies should begin with love rather than getting to them
Yes.
further down the line. And Notes from the Underground is perhaps the darkest demonstration of this terrifying idea. And as we move forward to looking at some of the less savory ways love can manifest, we should bear in mind that Dostoevsky thinks that a rejection of love entirely is the worst situation of all. This is why he equates lovelessness with hell. Abandoning our natural affection for other people dooms us entirely. It cannot get any worse than this. But anyway, enough of my gloomy rantings. We can now slowly move out of hell and begin to explore some of the ways Dostoyevsky thinks the noble emotion of love can be morphed into something much uglier. How it can turn into a wish to control or to dominate, or otherwise bring out the most violent aspects of the human psyche. Let's look at the people who talk about love, but believe only in ego. If you want to help me make more videos like this, then please consider subscribing to my channel or my Patreon. The link.
And I will say this, I don't like his personal philosophy about the way, or his opinions about religion and stuff. He's kind of a moron when it comes to that, but he does make a lot of good videos that trace the life and the philosophy of certain people. He does make good videos. You should, like, I do recommend that people actually watch some of his stuff.
Links are in the description. 2. The love of the egoist. In modern parlance, the term narcissistic love has become pretty commonplace. Various definitions abound, but they all orbit around one key insight. Some lovers are only out for themselves. Knowingly or not, they aren't truly loving for the sake of those they love, but instead for some selfish benefit. This might be to plug some gap in their self-image, or from hedonistic desire, or simply out of spite. But however this manifests, Dostoyevsky normally envisions it ending in disaster.
And, you know, that ultimately speaks to, you know, how my life kind of was in my 20s. Is that it was a very narcissistic, self-centered type of love that I was seeking to solve issues within myself. And it was an attempt to try to be selfless, but there was no ability to be selfless because I could only, my entire universe revolved around me being the moral arbiter, me making the assertions of what is right or wrong. It didn't actually come from any sort of service or anything like that. It came from me doing things that I thought people wanted me to do so I could get this feeling of love from them. It was like me creating an output to try to get me creating an output so that they give me a beneficial input, I guess.
Moreover, he sees this type of love everywhere in public life. Perhaps the most well-known example of this type of love is in the character of Luzhin from Crime and Punishment. Luzhin is a lawyer betrothed to marry Dunya, the sister of our protagonist Raskolnikov. Sorry, that's a lot of names to take in. However, it quickly becomes clear that Luzhin loves Dunya purely for the control he can exert over her. He talks about how he has always wished to marry a poor woman down on her luck, as this encourages her to remain constantly grateful to him for magnanimously agreeing to take her in just when she was least desirable. He thinks that.
And this is something that I see very common in the red pill community right now. This twisting of that idea of what love is that a woman should be constantly grateful and borderline worship the man that they are with. I don't think that that is a healthy type of love for the person getting the love from that person and the person providing that. I think it's a twisting of what service is. If you're truly love somebody, you will perform services for them, right? You will do things for them. But it's not a fucking exchange. It's not an economy of, it's not a transaction. Like, it's, what it is that you're doing what you should be doing, whether or not the other person is doing what they should be doing or not. And when it turns into this idea that this woman should be so grateful because of the things I provide, what it ends up doing is it doesn't create what I think is a loving environment. I think it creates a constant exchange. You're just giving, she's giving, you know, this grateful, like she's doing all this stuff because of how grateful she is for all the things that he provides. But ultimately, I don't think that's the end goal of what even a marriage should be. A marriage should be both people doing what they should be doing, whether or not the other person is or not. And when it comes down to it, if somebody just refuses to actually do what is provided, within what I think marriage should be, then like I think that that marriage ends up falling apart to the point where it doesn't really matter what one person does. What matters is that somebody thinks they're owed these things because they think of it as transactional. They don't. And then once that happens in this type of narcissistic love that somebody would want out of that, like in the scenario that he's talking about within the story, it becomes purely transactional and unloving. Like it just becomes like a gratefulness economy. It's not really love. I don't think love innately means that you would do something for somebody else, even if they don't reciprocate it.
Women make much better wives, you see, when they cannot.
But even within that, if only one person is doing something and the other person is not reciprocating, it's kind of complicated because you can accidentally go into this idea that it is transactional, but the idea that you're going to get something out of it for doing this is the part that makes it inherently selfish, and that turns it transactional. I'm doing this so this person does that. That is the twisting of where I think it becomes not love, but like selfish fulfillment of, I guess, exchanging gratefulness or exchanging, I provide you with this money, you should be grateful, so you should do these things because I provide you this. When it should just be, I provide you this because I love you, and the other person does this, it is grateful because they love me. It's not an exchange rate.
Survive without their husbands. He becomes terrified when Dunya looks like she might come into some significant money because he does not really want to freely love and be loved freely in return. What he desires most is to control his beloved. Moreover, when he feels...
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think. It does become more of a method of control. The transactional idea of what the red pill asserts is just about control. It's not about like creating families, creating a loving environment, creating what I think ultimately what marriage is a sacrament. I think I don't remember if it is or not, but I think it is like a type of holy mystery. It's something that can't fully be comprehended, I don't think, or explained. It is just, I think, a deeper method of understanding God. I think it is a type of method to do that. Basically become a slave, but yeah, I think you're talking about what I was saying earlier. People pleaser, marriage used to be a social compact. I don't know what you mean by that.
like he is losing this control, he turns spiteful and bitter, attempting to ruin Raskolnikov's reputation as a petty form of revenge. Today, we would probably not hesitate in calling Luzhin somewhat of a narcissist. Later, Dostoyevsky would explore this ugly variant on love in even greater detail in his terrifying short story, The Meek One. Here, he portrays how a narcissistic and domineering husband mentally tortures his own wife until she eventually decides to end her life. Dostoyevsky describes every inch of the man's control. He would deprive her of affection and have her beg it from him piece by piece. He would attempt to uncover dirt on her, so he always had something to hold above her head. Worst of all, he always presented things so he could hold the moral high ground and look down on her from it, not letting her forget a single one of her faults. Again,
which is also, yeah, that also comes from the type of, I think that this is also a part of what the red pill type of people do, is they like the idea of controlling the woman, right? They like the idea of, you want to be here, you should be grateful, I have control over you, these are the things that I want from you, and if you don't, then I can remove parts of the relationship that you like or enjoy or whatever. When yeah, it what ends up happening is the man just becomes domineering and essentially mentally tortures the other person. Women do this to men too. Like it's not just a man does this all the time to women. Women do this to men too. But it is it just comes from a really big fault on what they understand a relationship is. Anybody that's been married or happily married at some point understands that there's times in a relationship where somebody has to give a lot and receive nothing in return. The red pill seems like a direct opposite to radical feminism. No, direct opposite? No, it's the same. It's literally the same as radical feminism. It's just the masculine version of feminism. Social compact means a marriage between two individuals, a man and woman. For a man will go out and work, dangerous job and live a shorter life too, while women get to stay at home, take care of raise the kids, and live longer. That's what used to be, and of course, love it. Well, even within that concept of going to work a dangerous job, like most people back in the day used to be farmers, dude. Like men and women both worked on the farm together to produce an environment which they could survive and produce children. And it had to be loving, because if you didn't love each other, if you hated each other, what would happen is that you would end up not eating. You would end up not having food for the winter. So I think this idea of where women just never worked and they just stayed at home cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the kids. That, yes, sure, that was the primary responsibility of women, is to rear children. But it wasn't the only thing that they were responsible for. There were other things that they had to do in the household as a job, in a kind of the concept that we have now, to be able to survive those long winters. So it's a weird concept that's only kind of existed for maybe the past 150 years.
We see how a twisted and malformed version of love can manifest from a spiteful and controlling person.
What up, babe?
In this case, the egoist does not truly care about their beloved, but instead wants to see a glorified image of themselves reflected back at them. They want to prove that they are worthy of worship and affection, superior to everyone else around them, especially the one they are supposed to love. Both Lucian and this husband manage to come across as simultaneously repulsive and deeply pitiable. They want selfless devotion, they want to be loved, but they refuse to give it themselves. As a result, rather than receiving the free affection of another agent, they must extract it bit by bit through numerous avenues of coercion. I would wager we all know people who love a little bit like this. For Dostoyevsky, these people are also suffering from a certain inability to love. Though they are not quite in the living hell of the underground man, they are ultimately still cut off from true joy. And this begins a theme for Dostoyevsky's philosophy. The more self-centered...
That is something that I think that people don't really quite understand, especially within since feminism has gotten so bad and this narcissistic type of love that feminists want from men has existed. What happens is, what up, Jeremy? And what ends up happening is that it created this like big swing over to the red pill people, where they're just like, well, okay, if you don't have to give me these things, I don't have to give you these things. It just becomes, it just makes everything worse. The red pill feminists make everything fucking worse. They don't actually fix anything. And you could say that, the red pill just doesn't do anything but describe things. No, they're giving out prescriptions by the handfuls at this point, and all the prescriptions are fucking garbage. And their prescriptions that they give now also start to infect the way that they describe the world too. So they describe the world so they can give a very self-centered prescription on how to deal with women.
A love is, the less joy it can bring, both for the lover and the beloved. This will eventually culminate in him praising a semi-religious selfless love, but we'll save that for later in the video. It is also worth noting that at points, both Luzhin and this husband express seemingly quite deep feelings of self-loathing. This continues the idea that Dostoyevsky expressed in Notes from the Underground, how self-hatred can very quickly transform into a total lack of affection for anyone. Dostoyevsky also explores how possessiveness in love can bring out its destructive and explosive dimensions. For instance, in The Brothers Karamazov, much of Dmitry Karamazov's suffering is caused by his lust-filled attachments to a woman named Grushenka. In an attempt to win her over, he betrays almost every one of his principles. He deceives his fiancée, spends other people's money, and beats his own father in a jealous rage. Though Dmitry's love is not outright narcissistic or manipulative, it is still possessive and envious. And without spoiling too much, this leads to pretty disastrous consequences. Likewise, in The Idiot, we see jealousy slowly drive the character of Rogozhin insane, and this culminates in a horrific and violent act against a woman who needed more than anything for someone to be kind to her. In both cases, it is not that these lovers set out to use the object of their affection egoistically. Instead, it is that their fear and their self-image got in the way. They may...
And when it comes to, like, this is the thing that I've always tried to do with at least the majority of people that I interact with. Might not seem like it because, you know, my sense of humor is very aggressive and not just self-deprecating, but deprecating of others. Like, I talk shit constantly. But I do think that there is a lot, like, you have, everything that I do, I try to be kind with it. Like, my sense of humor is aggressive and brutal. My debate style is aggressive and brutal occasionally, but it is, when it comes to like a normal human interaction, I try to be as kind as I possibly can, even in cases where what I might say sound harsh. But I do think that where love kind of is rooted in is the ability to be kind. I think kindness and love are kind of near to the same thing as well. I think they're just different words to describe of basically the same thing. It's kind of weird because love is such a big, it's such a massive concept that it's hard to, like, you can only really find different ways of describing different aspects of what love is. But love is just this massive thing that has a lot within it. But and when it comes to, I think this is, once again, this is a lot of what the black pill, like, simpy type of people are really lost in, is the lustful type of love. They want, they don't really know or comprehend or even they don't understand what love is. They think that love is a bodily function. They think that, you know, cooming is what love is. And when they're not provided the ability to coom with somebody, then they think that they're being trampled on by society. And when it comes to and when it comes to being lost in that kind of idea of lust and conflating lust with love, it makes you out extremely bitter, and it makes you think in very vain ways, and it also keeps you locked off and maybe even too vulnerable to what love could actually do. I think a lot of these black pill simp type people, if they end up finding a woman that gives them even a mild amount of affection or some kind of sexual gratification, what will end up happening is they basically become slaves at the foot of the woman. And it becomes a reverse of what the types of relationships that he was talking about before, where some of these women need to be worshipped and have been given this worshiping attitude from a lot of these simpy dudes that just want to coom. And it is like it's a fucking massive problem, and it's another way that the red pill and the black pill kind of like from the male identity has just kind of destroyed masculinity, I think, and the ability for men to understand or be able to love, which is why quit being red pill, quit being black pill, go to fucking church, dude. Like, just stop.
Not to
Stop going online and looking for economic relationship advice on how to coon.
wanted to control, but they definitely wanted to possess. And Dostoyevsky paints this drop of selfishness transforming pure love into something potentially violent and terrifying. To branch out from romantic examples, we also see Dostoyevsky criticizing the intellectuals of his time period for their egoistic love of the people of Russia. Amongst the intelligentsia of his time, he saw that almost everyone would profess this deep affection for the poor and needy, but that this rarely extended to actually spending time with them and treating them as equals. Instead, much like the narcissistic lovers in his novels, the intellectual circles of St. Petersburg would insist that they already knew what the peasantry of Russia needed, and thought
Right, and this is something that you see in society as a whole right now too, is that there are a bunch of people, especially on the left right now, that think that they have this affinity for the poor and the downtrodden, these helpless immigrants that are coming from all over the world that just want to live and have economic benefits and be able to live life by the conceptions of what we think in our very, what is it called, abundant, what is it called, not affluent, but shit, what is the word? Can't think of the word. But they think that in this idea that we have here in America, what a satisfying life and what we are owed through whatever types of human rights they assert that we should have, they think that all, if once provided these things, these people will, I don't know, become a part of our society. And they also think that they can, if they allow these people to do what they want, if you allow the homeless person to inject themselves with heroin in a clean and safe place, that is a fulfillment of love, when all it is it's allowing somebody to destroy themselves for the sake of you feeling good. You feel good that the heroin addict can do heroin safe, but the heroin addict's fucking liver and kidneys are going to explode at some point, you retard. So you're not actually helping them. What you're doing is you're, first of all, prolonging the suffering and eventually leading to their death, and you're supporting that and you're allowing them to do it. The best thing you could do for a heroin addict is put them in jail and make sure that there's a doctor around that can help them detox. That's not the best thing you can do.
it was their job to enlighten them. Very few things seem to make Dostoevsky as angry as this.
And that's the thing too, is that a lot of the left think that if they can get these people from other countries to come here and enlighten them about human rights and the secular worldview of do what you want as long as it's not hurting somebody else. Coom all you want, just coom all the time. Just be a coomer, just coom, and your life will be way more fulfilling. And yeah, it's a confusing methodology to try to create a society. It doesn't do anything but degrade it and destroy it.
Sending attitude. For him, behind all of these highfalutin words was a fundamental lack of respect for the traditions and way of life of the Russian peasantry, which in many ways Dostoevsky thought was superior to the westernized academic circles of the cities. This thought culminates in his astonishing novel Demons, where he skewers the members of the intelligentsia as fundamentally self-interested. He accuses them of really just wanting to use whatever sentiments they deem necessary to gain control and power, and of thinking they knew how the peasantry should live their lives better than they did. Here, we also begin to see another theme in Dostoyevsky's view on love. He not only views it as of extreme interpersonal significance, but it also becomes a key part of his wider philosophical and political views as
And this is something else too, because I get accused of doing this shit by people in real life. When I say that, you know, there are broke people, and I know the things that they shouldn't do, it doesn't mean that I'm asserting I know how they should live their life. I think that the baseline you should do is go to church, and the things that you shouldn't do are, like, you know, take drugs and coom all the time. And, that's like my only things that I really think people should do and shouldn't do. Everything else, if you go to church, they can help you with what all the other things you should be doing. But when it comes to like legal stuff, I don't want people in the fucking streets shooting up. I don't want to go to Atlanta, drive through downtown Atlanta and see homeless dudes helicopter dicking around there. I don't want to see that. It's disgusting. It's demoralizing and absolutely destructive for society. Just scoop these people up, put them somewhere where they can helicopter dick in a fucking cement room for all I give a shit. Just not on the street where children can see it.
time goes on. The idea
Yeah, my phone finally kicked the can. Yeah. Figured that was about to happen. You can live that way, but nothing noble. Remember, kids, listen to your elders. Yeah. You can live that way, but nothing noble. Well, this is the thing too. It's like I don't like when I mean what I don't say how people should live. I'm not going to tell them what type of career they should do, what type of house they need to live in, or what kind of car they need to have. Those are things that, you know, individual people can decide for themselves. But if what we're talking to is about like normal things within a society that makes a society better or worse, don't helicopter dick shooting up heroin in the street. Yeah, that should be illegal. You should be put in jail for doing that.
we see running through all of the examples of this section
What
is
up,
that
Evelyn?
love can become corrupted through a sense of superiority and a lack of respect for the agency of the beloved. And this makes sense given the particulars of Dostoyevsky's religious views. For him, part of what made Christ's love for mankind so moving is that he was fully human. He was not a spirit standing above us dictating orders, but instead suffering alongside us and delivering his message as a God-made man. I am not Christian myself, but I don't think you have to be to see the beauty.
That actually triggered me for a second. God made man. No, he's fully God. He's not. This is such a difficult thing because, like, I kind of understand. Like, Jesus has always been a man. Like, as far as I can understand it, he's always been a man. It was always the intention of God to be fully man, fully God. Jesus was always supposed to be that, whether or not everything happened the way that it, whether or not they ate the apple, whatever, ate the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. That's not what. But from what I understand is that it's not God made man. It's that he is and has always been fully man and fully God. This was always the intention for humanity. We were always supposed to be connected to God through Jesus. We were always meant to be that.
In this idea, Dostoyevsky constantly points out how our desire for love can mingle with our fears and insecurities to create this noxious mixture of condescension and control, and that this threatens to strangle what could have been a joyous kind of love. This poisoning of kindness and affection by a wish to control also forms the backbone of much of his critiques of other religious movements. For instance, Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, and even some Orthodox churches. And I think this warning is worth listening to for our own lives. How often do we taint our own love with some form of egoism or selfishness? Sure, we might not be total narcissists or believe that we are fundamentally superior to our partner, but how often do we think we love someone for who they are, only for it to emerge emerge later that we may have partly loved them for what they could do for us. It is.
Yeah. And I think that's ultimately where, like, this is my thing, right? Like, I literally could care less about things people have. And I could literally care less about I care more about, like, the attitude of a person, right? When I'm thinking of a relationship. I care about the attitude of the person and not necessarily what the things are that they could provide me. I don't really care about being provided with anything. I want to see somebody that I think that, for all intents and purposes, they could make me better, and that I would want to constantly provide them with the ability to be better and to be better supported. That's what I seek, right? I don't seek the things that somebody could provide me. I seek somebody that I think that I could make better, right? Not necessarily for what they could provide to me, but somebody that I see that I could help them be better. And not necessarily even to say that somebody would have to be better. Well, you know what I mean? Fuck it.
It's a difficult question to pose, but one well worth asking when something as important as love is on the table. But then this also begs the question, how do we love in a way that is not so egoistic? Well, Dostoyevsky has a surprising answer. 3. Love and sacrifice. In the 14th century, the English mystic Julian of Norwich fell ill with a fever and began to experience visions. A devout Christian, she experienced revelations about the passion Jesus felt for humanity as he died on the cross, sacrificing himself to save our souls. In one of these visions, Christ tells her, "It is endless satisfaction to me that I ever suffered passion for thee, and if I might suffer more, I would suffer more." The phrasing here is incredibly important. For
And I think that's, that idea right there, like, it's kind of difficult for me to listen to people say that they have visions about things like that. But I do think that conception right there has something that's always kind of been with me since I was a kid. I think that's the only kind of aspect of love that I ever had fully ingrained in me since I was younger. And I think that concept right there is something that I can innately sense. Like, I can sense it in other people. I can understand that somebody has that same type of concept within them just by having conversation or listening to them talk about things for a little while. That idea right there is something that I think is the sort of love. I don't know if it's in everybody, but I think that there are people that comprehend that idea and live it out better, and you can see it. Man, I'm not saying that people live it out perfectly either, but there is that idea that it makes me happy that I could suffer for you, and if I could suffer more for you, I would happily do it. And what was the last part?
Suffer more, I would suffer more.
Okay,
I
so
ever
that was
suffered passion for thee, and if I might suffer more, I would suffer more. The phrasing.
What is the definition of passion? I forgot that. Let me make sure that I think. Yeah, I'm not really understanding what he's meaning by passion of this idea. All right, see you, Voltaire. It's difficult for me to understand what they mean by because when I think of the idea of passion, to me, from what I understand so far, is that it is usually a negative thing. I'm trying to think of what it even could be meant in that. That's the one thing that seems kind of weird in that phrasing. I don't know.
Here is incredibly important. For Julian, Christ did not just suffer because it was necessary. He did so as a loving and willing act of self-sacrifice. So great was his devotion to mankind that he was not only able to bear suffering for us, but was glad to do so. Just like how you will often hear parents not just say that they would die for their children, but that they would do so without a hint of regret or resentment in their hearts. Again, I am not personally religious, but I have had this line
Yeah, we don't need to hear about your religious gay fucking shit. Don't fucking start writing in your diary right now, please, for the love of God. We've had a good video so far. A compelling action that's from the emotion of love. I don't know, like, maybe that is the definition. Maybe I'm too, like, like I've just read too much church father stuff that, like, I just hear the word passion and I just immediately assume it's like self-centered, like like weird and out of control emotions. They're self-centered in nature. But maybe it is compassion, is maybe, I don't know. But I think the overall concept is like, what he was explaining is the suffering. I would suffer for you more if I could, or I would suffer for you more for you happily. I think that's an idea that I've had since I was a kid. Like, that's always been the idea that I've had, is what I would do if I loved somebody. I would be more than willing to sacrifice everything, or sacrifice any sort of I would want to love somebody so much that I'd be willing to sacrifice everything, not necessarily that I am. Like, I would never sacrifice, the church or God or anything like that. But if God, I would actually sacrifice everything for God, though. Like, that would be something that I would do. But what I mean in terms of like a marriage or a relationship, sacrifice everything beyond. It's difficult to kind of explain because it's not. I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I'm starting to get tired.
Running through my head for months now, because it is one of the most insightful meditations on selfless love I have ever come across. And it also summarizes in a single sentence what Dostoyevsky thinks the purest kind of affection can amount to. A key theme in many of Dostoyevsky's later works is the idea of loving through sacrifice. This forms a very clear contrast from the egoistic kind of love we explored in the previous section. Whereas the selfish lover attempts to extract from their beloved, the sacrificial lover intends to give themselves over to them, as if as an offering. Obviously, such a move is fraught with danger, and despite...
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say, is like giving myself to the other person. That's what I mean by, like, that's the type of person I'd want to be married to, right? And, without getting super personal, like, my previous marriage was not that. That was me trying to be sacrificial to the extent that I could when I was an atheist. But it was ultimately, like, it was more of a, like, I offer myself to you, and then the other person would be like, thanks, and then just punch you across the fucking face. That's more like the relationship that I had before. That was the majority of it. It's like, here, I know you had a bad day. I bought you some lunch on the way home because I knew that you'd be tired and wouldn't want to do. Oh, that's really great. Be really great if you would just come home and, you should have actually done more than just buy me food. It's just, shit like that. Married 17 years, love and commitment are things I don't think anyone understands. Yeah. And I think that within sacrifice, like the idea of being self-sacrificing even within a relationship, is a part of commitment. You have to be able to sacrifice to be even able to fully be committed. I think that it is like even love itself. Like love is such like an over like it's such a big thing that I think that even commitment within itself is also just an aspect of describing what love is, or describing an aspect of what love is.
Praising this sort of sacrificial love, Dostoyevsky does not shy away from how it can end horribly. Arguably, his novel The Idiot is all about how a kind man who loves in a wholehearted and selfless way is driven mad by the cruel and cowardly behavior of other people. The titular character, Prince Myshkin, spends much of the novel attempting to help the fallen woman, Nastasia Filipova, and her troubled and reckless lover, Rogozin. Sorry if I've completely butchered the pronunciations there. More than anything else, he wants them to see their own value, bring them out of their cynicism, and love them. He even sacrifices his prospects with the woman he truly wants to be with to achieve this, and forgives Rogozin's murder attempt on him. And yet, in the end, it is all in vain. I won't totally spoil it here, but suffice to say, the innocent Prince Myshkin's attempts blow up in his face, and he is left a broken man, sent abroad for extensive medical treatment in an attempt to recover his psyche. He gave all.
And I think that is a danger. Like this is something too, right? I don't. When it comes to things like that, to some respect, like I can understand why somebody would want to do that, and even respect a person who would do something like that for others. But I do think if there's somebody in your life that you're trying to develop, or like if you're trying to get married and stuff, you shouldn't be sacrificing that. But it is a commendable thing to do that. Oh shit, it's you. Oh no. Shit. Well, things just got uncomfortable here, boys. We're gonna have to hide. Oh fuck. We're gonna have to. Oh no. I'm just kidding. Welcome. Hey you. All right, everyone bully Hugh. Anyways. What was I even talking about? I don't even remember what I was talking about. But okay, so it's a commendable thing that somebody would want to do that. There is a point of where you have to understand, like maybe if somebody's trying to kill you, maybe back off a little bit. Maybe you're too involved in other people's business. Maybe go back to that girl you're trying to get with. Go get married, have some kids, start your own fucking family. Let other people's relationship be their own relationship. It's a commendable thing to want them to both work out and try to support both of them so they could be good for each other. But like it's ultimately their choices that matter in that. If they're not going to, if there's not, is a point where you have to understand that there's nothing you can do. So it is one of those things. Like I don't think that it is one of those things. It's dangerous, but I can understand why someone would do that.
All he had in acts of selfless love, and yet.
But I think I do know the story that he's talking about, and like yeah, I think being that committed to somebody else's the shit that happens to him ultimately is caused by him trying to be selfless in a very selfish type of way. I know that sounds strange, but you can be completely and totally, utterly selfless and do it in a way that you think that this is your responsibility and that you have to do it, but ultimately it's not your responsibility. If these two people never were going to work out and they're just going to keep going, the best option he had was just not to fuck around with that anymore and just move on with his life. That was, and if you're too stubborn and thinking that you're the only person that could possibly save this or fix this, you end up completely destroying yourself.
Dostoevsky paints him as suffering for it. The question dangling in the air is, should he have been so kind? Should he have been so loving? And Dostoevsky's answer...
Well, I think this is something maybe he doesn't quite understand within that story. Is if it wasn't that he was so kind and so loving, is that he was super nice and trying to do everything he could to force these two people to fulfill what he thought they should be for each other. That's what really happened. It was more of it's not that he's being punished for being kind and loving. It was that he's punishing himself by putting himself in a scenario where he thinks he knows how this should be, but ultimately he could not force these two people to be what he envisioned they ought be.
Still, unequivocally, yes. We
Well,
get the
yeah, he does.
true radicalism of his loving philosophy here. He implores us to love others selflessly even as it's going horribly wrong for us. For him, this is what it truly means to be self-sacrificial in our love. And let's be absolutely clear, this is a tall order the great Russian is asking us to perform, and it leaves us incredibly vulnerable to exploitation and manipulation. But as we shall see in the next section, his demands only become more extreme. We see a similar kind of selfless love in the character of Alyosha in The Brothers Karamazov. He is the most spiritual of the three brothers, and his most remarkable trait is his complete unwillingness to judge other people, or consider them beneath him in any way. All throughout the novel, he encounters people who have done terrible things, pursued selfish ends, and committed only scant acts of kindness in their lives. And yet, each time, despite all the good he is doing in the world, he will continually affirm that he is not better than them. Instead, he shows them an unrelenting and indiscriminate kind of love. This comes out most strongly in his meeting with Grushenka, another of Dostoevsky's fallen women. Despite her poor reputation and lowly societal position, Alyosha will not consider himself superior to her, and indeed at points even acts as if he is beneath her. Confronted with genuine egalitarian affection and understanding...
Oh God, don't fucking put egalitarian. Jesus Christ, dude. But this is another aspect of which I try to enact with people. Like, there are people, and this was kind of something I was going to talk about that Carl Jung kind of talks about, is the idea that, hell, I'll talk about that later. This is too complicated for my exhausted brain at this point to go into. But what I'm trying to say is this: I don't actually think that anyone is better than anybody else. I don't think that I'm better than anyone else. I do genuinely try to treat people as they're my equal, or either my equal or above me. I think that is the most healthy way to approach most people. But there is a point where people cross a line to where you don't have to think that you're better than them or that you're higher than them. What it turns into is, this is just a person that you can't interact with, and that if any type of interaction, whether it is to shame a person into bettering themselves, or just trying to slowly convince them over to your side by being friendly, what ends up happening is that they just take advantage of it, and it just reaffirms this really sick, self-centered, egotistic kind of narcissism within themselves that does nothing but worsen them. I mean, there's somebody specifically who I will never name again, nor will I even... I don't interact with this person at all anymore because of that. Because I don't think that any kind of interaction that any person gives this person is good for them. I think that they just prolong and actually do damage not only to themselves, but to that other person. He lost me with the egalitarian. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of a gay atheist, so he says weird shit sometimes. Isn't that the approach self-sacrificing your own worth? Oh, yeah. Okay. Bumble and lift up your spout. Bumble. I don't know what you mean by bumble. What's the definition of bumble? I want to search up the definition of Bumble now. Oh, this is a fucking dating app. What the fuck? I don't want the dating app. Move or act in an awkward, confused manner. Okay, I think I understand what you mean by that.
Grushenka's spirits are restored, and she actually begins to change as a person for the better. He does the same thing for many others over the course of the story. Alyosha will take someone who has been made cruel by self-judgment or the judgment of others.
Oh, humble. Okay, yeah. Okay, now that makes more sense. Like, I knew you weren't talking about a dating app. That was just, I didn't even know that there was a dating app called Bumble, but
And he will extend
but okay, that makes more sense.
Hands to them. But this is not the condescending wish to save that Dostoyevsky was so critical of in the previous section. This is instead a genuine brotherly love that emanates from Alyosha like an aura. This is the ideal sort of love for Dostoyevsky. Endless,
Yes.
uncondescending, and selfless. And he admits that this is incredibly demanding. In the same novel, the elder Zosima, a much-regarded monastic, talks about the difference between active love and a kind of dreamy love. Whereas it is easy for anyone to fantasize about grand romantic gestures or a general affection for mankind, or to say that they love someone from the bottom of their heart, active love is different and much more difficult. Zosima admits that it is harsh and dreadful and requires labor and fortitude. It is the kind of love that is willing to give and give and give without a hint of resentment or entitlement. I would
Exactly. And think that a lot of people like, and this is the thing, right? Even within that idea, the two stories that he kind of the monastic and the dude that was trying to fix a relationship and sacrifice everything for the sake of that, those are not the same thing, and I don't even think that they are even kind of the same thing. I do think that that story that he was talking about before is expressing a more of a selfish, these people, I know that they should be better. I can see them as they should be, and I'm going to try to force these people to be what I think they should be so they'll be good for each other. And what ended up happening is that he just destroyed himself. And ultimately, what would have been best is just like, hey, you guys are kind of fucking up. Here's some advice. If you don't want to take it, that's up to you. I think that's the full extent that you should ever get involved in anybody else's relationships. But but those two things right there, I think that maybe that first one is more of a naive type of love, of not really comprehending or fully understanding. I don't think it's naive either. I think it was ultimately self-centered in the way that he was doing that. But the second type with the monastic, yes, that is the type of love that I would want to be at all times. And then it's very difficult to be that type of loving person, to be that type of kind. That is something that I hope at some point that I can achieve that, but I don't know if I'm even capable of it. And I know one thing, I'm never going to be capable of it without the church. Go to church.
argue we see this kind of love in small ways everywhere, from the grandfather who painfully kneels on brittle bones to play with his delighted granddaughter, to the wife standing by her husband as he's ravaged with illness. It is in the eyes of the dog who leaps to the defense of their owner, and in the last breath of the soldier taking a bullet for their friend. But to have this active love be the guiding force of your life, to be totally devoted to others, willing to sacrifice anything for them, and actively loving them every second of every day, that is the sort of love Zosima and Dostoyevsky demand of us. And at points he says it is the highest virtue a person can have. It is the cornerstone of Dostoyevsky's faith, and he finds its apotheosis in the image of Christ dying for us all, still crying out for his captors to be forgiven. And all throughout Dostoyevsky's novels, we see the redeeming power of being loved like this.
Yeah, and something that you actually do see, like, not everybody, because in the few times that I'm actually able to be like that, you would be surprised how many people end up changing their mind. and almost kind of entranced with the way that you approach life. Because, you know, the way that I am on the internet is aggressive. You know, I'm mostly joking around with people I know. I'm just being like a chat troll or whatever. But at work, I'm way different. Like, I'm there and like I'm reading books in the break room all the time. People come up and ask me questions about the stuff, and I'll just be like, oh yeah, you should go to church. Like, go to the Orthodox Church up, you know, about 30 minutes away from here. Trust me, if you like the ideas that are in this book expressed by this father, you're gonna love going to this church. Go to church. But anyways, um, but just and I'm trying to do this without like saying exactly the things that I've done because I don't like. I feel like when I talk about things that I do, it's gloating. But there are people that I've helped that just by me helping them in this way, they would become interested in the things that I'm doing. And if the thing that I'm doing is reading a book about the church fathers, and they're like, hey, well, I just don't even believe in that God stuff. You know, I don't think that, you know, it just does, none of that stuff makes any sense. Why would, like, one of the things that brought over to me once was somebody talking, well, there's so many different types of, like, there's so many different churches. Like, I just don't understand how, it's just incomprehensible. I just don't get it. And I was like, you talk to the right person. Let me give you all this information that I have. And then, you know, and then that person ends up going. And, you know, that to me is what I seek in every type of conversation that I have like that. But anyways, I don't even remember. I'm getting tired. I'm getting through this video.
Crime and punishment, it is the
Now I'm probably playing a game for a little. My brain is fucking fried at this point. I don't even remember where am I. Who are we talking about? Carl Jung.
selfless and noble love of Sonya that helps Raskolnikov rediscover his ailing conscience and become a better man. In The Idiot, it is what convinces Nastasia Filipova, if only for a moment, that she might have worth as a person. And in The Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha's love consistently transforms the people around him from callous and uncaring to kind and generous. For Dostoyevsky, this is what makes selfless love worthwhile, even when it leaves us vulnerable and sometimes goes disastrously wrong. For him, it has the power to cut through people's insecurity and self-destruction and make them see that they are worthy of respect and reveal to them the kind of person that they could be if they truly tried. One of the...
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I think even in those times where I'm able to be in that type of mindset for however, like, I can only stay in that mindset for a couple of weeks and then it just shifts in and out. But even when you do that, I think that that's kind of the idea of what being an example is. You convert more people by being an example than you do by uh, showing them theology or explaining them philosophical concepts. They become they almost want to understand how you were able to achieve this. And I've seen that in other people too. And that's been see that in the lives of the saints and stuff. But people at my work don't really talk to me that much because I'm either reading or listening or trying to learn philosophy. People act strangely when someone isn't doom scrolling. Well, yeah, well, I don't think that people will just naturally come up and talk to people. Like, you have to actually try to engage with them a little bit. It is like it's really whenever I interact with people, it's usually me watching, just like glancing around as I'm reading, seeing what people are doing. And sometimes, you know, you catch somebody not able to operate the fucking vending machine or something. He's like, hey, need some help here? Let me show you. This is what you have to do to make this vending machine work because it's a piece of shit. Or maybe a fucking microwave just stops working. Well, hey, here's some help. I can help you with that. Just you have to fuck around with the dial a little bit, otherwise it just doesn't turn on. Do optics matter then? What do you mean? like optics, and then like optics is in like seeing. I don't like the added like I guess optics matter in that. I think that the way that you are and approach people is more important than actually talking about scriptures or theology and stuff to begin with. I think that what I mean by this is I think that the attitude itself, the humbleness and the ability to not put yourself above somebody, just talking to them as an equal or even putting yourself under them. And what I mean by that is maybe there's somebody that, has no teeth, or, you know, looks like they've survived about 100 rounds with some meth, but then still treating them like they're just like a normal person that, that made some bad decisions. But hey, you got a job, you managed to pass the drug test. You're not much different than me. We just got here through different circumstances. And you can't figure out how to work the microwave. Here, let me help you figure out how to work the microwave. And then they come up to you a few days later, and they'll start talking randomly about, like, yeah, I was reading my Bible the other day, and I was like, this, and this, and then you go like, oh, that's cool, man. Like, I didn't. That's awesome that you're interested in the scriptures. Here's some stuff here that I've been reading. That's actually some of the stuff that you see me reading here is about early church fathers and stuff. It does, like, for instance, when I'm in a debate space and I'm talking to somebody who is a Protestant who comes to debate something, I'm going to immediately attack their found like their grounding of how they can even give me a proper interpretation of stuff. But when I'm talking to like a regular dude who just reads the Bible because he gets something out of it, I approach that in a completely different way of like trying to not manipulate. Like it's more like, oh yeah, that's an interesting perspective. You should really, if you want to hear some really cool perspectives that really helps me make a like that really combines everything in a very holistic manner through the scriptures and the church, you should try to go to this church, and they'd be able to help you even more than what most people could. That's kind of what I do.
Wonderful things about Dostoyevsky's novels
I don't even remember what I'm talking about. I'm fucking getting tired. My brain's shutting down.
is that almost no one is
I think I'm just done with this video. I'm gonna move on to another one. I just got spam, but it's probably, yeah, Ariac. Shit. There was one more thing that I wanted to go through, and I've accidentally spent 2 hours babbling on two videos that are about 40 minutes in total. Hold on a second. Shit. What am I doing? I can't even fucking work OBS now. My brain is fried. I think I'll save this stuff for later. Uh, there's one thing. I don't think it was. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I wasn't. I thought I already had this video pulled up. Turns out I didn't. Well, maybe this is just a sign that I should just stop, because I don't know if I'd be able to even give a be able to give a comprehensive explanation of what I'm even meaning. well, this video, I can't even remember the title of the video. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish. Um, I think I'm just going to finish. I think I don't even feel like doing that. Time is it? Oh, it's almost midnight. That's why I'm getting so tired. It's almost my bedtime. All right, let me see if I can find this real quick. Hey, with I'll do this one last thing. Anyways, let's see. I thought I just had it. Oh my god, wake up, fuckface. Because everything that I was talking about leads up to what ultimately I was going to talk about by the end of it. And I just need to find. Had it here just a second ago. There we go.
There's a reason Dostoyevsky.
But it all kind of leads up to this video. Is what I wanted to talk about. And it kind of explains a concept that I agree with. And this is why I started kind of with Carl Jung, because he gives the different type of archetype psychologically that creates, or he observes the kind of concepts that Dostoyevsky kind of explains through his storytelling. And then the end result is something that I think ends up in this way, where like this idea of what relationships are has kind of created a society of cowardly and weak men, because they're all like coomers. And I think coomers somehow are, I think being a coomer and being a coward is almost like the same thing. I think if you're a coomer, you are a coward. And it's been difficult for me to kind of connect those two thoughts. And this was a video that I was listening to at work, which I need to be careful because this dude flashed titties before. But I think this was I don't know. We'll see. Well, if it happens, I'm just going to, I don't know, jump off a bridge and go to sleep. But this video kind of helped me connect it to some extent, I think. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to fucking do it.
Wrote like a man crawling out of hell. He didn't study temptation from a distance. He lived inside it. He understood that the real battlefield of a man's life is not in the streets, the office, or the marketplace. It's in the quiet rooms where no one is watching, where the only enemy capable of destroying you is the one whispering inside your ribs. When Dostoyevsky wrote about sin, indulgence, and collapse, he wasn't moralizing. He was documenting what happens to a man when he lets his cravings become his compass. And if you read him closely, you'll see a terrifying pattern. The men who fall the hardest never fall in public first. They fall in secret. They fall in the shadows. They fall in their desires. Temptation is where a man begins to rot, and lust is the first crack in his armor. Dostoyevsky believed every man carries two selves inside him. The higher self that hungers for mission, meaning, order, and the lower self that wants to surrender to pleasure, chaos, and escape. The tragedy is that most men think they are choosing freely, when in reality, they are being pulled like puppets by impulses they refuse to understand.
And see, this is kind of what I was explaining earlier in the video too, is that the idea of what the shadow is with Carl Jung is they are these uncontrollable emotions, or they're these emotions that you have that are kind of like affecting you. And it's called the shadow in Carl Jung's philosophy because what it is for most people something that just develops and is created behind the sort of mask that people wear in different scenarios, the different personas that they have. And what ends up happening is a lot of men ignore. There's two types of men. There's the type of men that see those emotions that they have, put them in their right place, put them in the corner where you understand that they're there, you understand the influence that they're having on you, and your ability to push through them and to not let them to affect your decision making. And then there's the man who ignores that they actually have those emotions. And the man that ignores he has those emotions is a man that's controlled by those emotions, because they are there, they are present, and they will manipulate you if you let them live in a shadow in the back of your mind. That's not exactly what Carl Jung means by the shadow, but it's similar to me. But um and this is what happens when it comes to lust. And I think that lust right now is the biggest thing that is destroying society as a whole right now. Is you have a bunch of men who just think that life's fulfillment is the ability to coom, is the ability to have a woman, is the ability to have a woman to coom with, not to build families with. This is why you see relationships right now that are based on just two people, a man and a woman living together, never being married, just cooming with each other all the time and living in a house pretending that they're married, but actually doing nothing that is required with what a marriage is. You should have children. You should be building a life with somebody. You should be trying to grow a family. It's the cooming part is like the most ridiculous thing to live your life based on. You, even if it's just monogamous cooming, where it's just two people living with each other, that's still stupid. It's still like utterly and completely antithetical to what builds society. It is. Damn, my fucking voice is starting to go out now. But it is ultimately. It's not better. It's not worse. It's about the same as the type of person that goes around and fucks a different chick at the bar. It's the same shit. You're not actually putting marriage in its proper place. You're not actually treating it with the respect that it needs. And but anyways, I don't know why the hell I went off that long tangent. But ultimately, what I was trying to say is that what happens here, men who ignore that they have feelings or ignore that they um need to even control a type of emotion. Once you've given the idea that it's a natural emotion, it's a bodily function, that it's okay to need to have fulfilled, or it's okay to um, constantly be in the state of mind of thinking that you need to achieve this. It it is a sign of a man who is completely unable to control themselves. If you can't control your cooming instincts, then you're not a man. Sorry. If you can't control, if you can't be celibate and not coom and not do anything for a year or two at a time, you have no control. If you cannot, if the idea that, if the idea of, having these sexual desires and that they should only be put in a proper place where you're married and it's for just bonding with your wife or and having children. If you can't put sexuality in its proper place, you have no control, and you're not able to be what I would consider a full man. You're just a partial man, you're a portion of a man. You're not a full man.
This is why lust is so dangerous. It masquerades as a harmless craving, a moment of pleasure, a distraction you think you can control. But Dostoyevsky knew better. He knew lust was a mirror, and the reflection it reveals is merciless. Lust exposes the coward inner man, the part of him that trembles at discipline, avoids responsibility, and bows to whatever gives him immediate relief. It reduces a man from commander to captive, and the moment a man allows his instincts to rule him, he begins the quiet journey towards spiritual paralysis.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was explaining before. It is this idea that this craving, and it's not that big a deal. It's just something that feels good for the moment, and it's not that big a deal. It's one of those things that's just it's one of those easy ways of just completely destroying any ability to have any sort of self-discipline and any amount of courage or bravery whatsoever. If you don't have the courage to not coon because you see a shapely woman's ass, then just stop looking. Like I think, like I won't say that lust is like an easy thing to conquer. It's not. It's a deceptively simple thing that you think could just be conquered by just becoming resistant. You're never going to be resistant to lust. Lust is one of those things that there is no real conquering of it. It's just, for the most part, you just avoid it. And to a certain extent, if you are wrapped up in this desire, right, this carnal kind of thing that you get wrapped up into because you see, I don't know, a woman that looks good in a dress or whatever, or somebody, whatever, you see something a woman that you're super attracted to, even when you are being like you're being attacked in that, you still have to have the ability to suppress it. It's a very violent type of spiritual attack, and it is extremely difficult, but you should avoid it whenever possible, but you're not going to be able to avoid it forever, and you should have the ability to suppress it. And if you can't, then you need to be able to do that. That doesn't mean go and try to, go look, I don't know, go look at fucking porn or whatever until you just feel nothing when you see this. Don't do that. That's retarded. That's setting yourself up for failure. You're not going to be able to gain a resistance to it. You're just going to have to figure out in these times where you're being spiritually attacked what works best to suppressing that.
Look at Dostoyevsky's characters.
But,
Raskolnikov.
that's just my opinion, what I've figured out for myself. If you have issues with that, you should be taking advice from some dude at almost fucking midnight, so fucking tired he can't barely make a comprehensible sentence at this point, and he's losing his fucking voice. You should go talk to a priest.
Dmitry Karamazov, Stavrogin, men who were brilliant, capable, ambitious, even heroic in potential. Yet each one fell because he couldn't master the storms inside his own body. Raskolnikov drowned in guilt and delirium because he sought power without discipline. Dmitry was undone not by his circumstances, but by the whirlpool of lust
and what this discipline, like, you're not going to be able to resist. Like, this is the thing, you're able to resist. That's not what I'm really saying. What I'm saying is that you're not going to be able to completely avoid lust. You have to have the discipline to create this type of resistance that makes sure that you don't fall for it. If you don't have a good system in place in which you can react in the best way that you possibly can to lust, and you're just gonna fucking get the shit beat out of you by it every single time. Is fucking dangerous shit.
Impulse he never learned to tame. Stavrogin was a man with the strength of 10 men, but without the restraint of even one. Dostoyevsky is teaching us something uncomfortable. Temptation doesn't destroy you. Your obedience to it does.
Yeah.
And the more you obey lust, the more you fear the consequences of living without it.
Yeah.
You become fragile, dependent, soft. This is where cowardice begins.
Makes you soft, and then it also makes you reliant on something, and it makes you fear losing this. But I think I'm so fucking tired, dude. I need to go to sleep. I'm like losing my mind at this point. But ultimately, what this whole thing was eventually supposed to lead up to is this. You need to be able to, you need to be able to suffer, and you need to have the discipline to suffer, and the ability to understand that you're going to make it to the other side of this. Don't fall for it. And, also don't fucking punish yourself for not being perfect, but always try to do better. And when it comes to specifically this lust, which is the thing that's destroying society as a whole to me right now, it is it ultimately does create a society full of cowards who are scared to lose this one thing that they think keeps them going. And they have to understand that this thing that they think is keeping them going is actually keeping them in a state of complete and total fear and reliance. So, I mean, this is why, I will always advocate for the complete and total banning of any sort of pornography whatsoever. I'm at the point where I think even movies that are being made and TV shows that are being made need to be heavily fucking censored, because it's one of these things that is so easy to entrap specifically young men into, that it makes them stunted in a developmental level that makes them incapable of growing up, and they never stop being a child because they don't understand how to suffer. And I don't think that having these ridiculously overly sexualized depictions all over everything actually does anything to help society. I think it actually makes it worse, and it makes it more difficult for specifically younger men to be able to learn how to control themselves, because this shit's just being flashed at them constantly. And it makes it harder for those young men, or those children, basically, 16, 15, 17, 15-year-olds that get addicted to this type of shit and carry that on to their early 20s. It makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for them to actually grow up. And like, even within our culture, masturbation and stuff like this is just seen like a normal and okay thing to do. It's not. Grow the fuck up. Quit playing with yourself. Quit playing with yourself, weirdo. But I think that this is, if there's anything that I can accomplish in my life in any sort of political sense, the complete and total banning of any pornographic imagery and reducing the amount of sexualized imagery in society, that would be the one thing that I'd want to accomplish. If there was anything politically that I could do, that is the thing that I would want to do with my life. But I'm going to sleep. I'm like talking to you right now with my eyes closed. I'm already halfway asleep. I'm going to sleep. Y'all have a good one. Oh, wait. Before I go, there was another point that I wanted to make, too. Because this isn't something that just destroys men. This is the last thing that I'll say about it. What happens to this is how it affects men. That's how it affects men, but how it affects women too is that when they see all these things and how men like drool over this stuff, it creates something within women that they think that this is what men want. And so then they do those things that they think men would want. And it destroys women as well, because you start depicting women in these sexualized ways. They think, and because young boys will drool over that, and think that that's, you know, so super. Oh man, she's so fucking hot. They they try to model themselves over what the culture normalizes, right? So what then you have is a bunch of women over sexualizing themselves, degrading themselves for the attention of men, and those men destroying themselves by uh, by harming themselves, and you know, like not, you know, cutting themselves, but I mean like self harming themselves spiritually, and it's, I mean, there's a reason why I don't fully comprehend it, but as I read more of the church fathers, specifically sexual sin is something that is so so fucking dark and evil, and you can understand it too, because, and I'll just give this example real quick. You can understand that sexual sins specifically have this extraordinarily like evil part of it, because you could say, yeah, somebody who, you know, takes out a kid, they should be put to death, like they should go to prison, they should be hung or whatever. But when somebody, you know, commits PDF stuff, uh, you know, me on my instinctual level is I want them flayed alive and uh, tortured for the rest of their existence. That's my innate instinctual reaction. So there is a sense where we can all fully grasp on an instinctual level that sexual sins, by their nature, are particularly despicable. So, and I think that with that instinctual understanding that I have, I am starting to understand better why adultery and all these things, not just adultery, just by not just, but just like fornication, like, you know, just being a coomer. Why being a coomer in this way is also like an act of fucking great evil. Like it's very evil. It's evil. Like I don't understand. I can't even express it to you. It is evil. Uh, Anyways, I'm going to sleep. Have a good one.